Thanks very much, Thomas, and thanks for the invitation to Teagasc to present at this seminar here today. And unfortunately, I must again pass on the apologies of Jerry Boyle, who was attending the funeral of Paddy O'Keefe. May he rest in peace in Cork today. And I reiterate your sentiments about David. We actually had a good chat beforehand, and I reminded him that you're only allowed to throw one grenade up towards the top of the room during the conference. So you've had your shot, David. So anyway, look, I think we've had a lot of really good presentations today, setting out the scene as to what the problem is, and I suppose, really not looking at this as a problem, but as an opportunity. And I suppose the whole context in which this debate or this seminar is framed is around Food Harvest 2020 and what can Irish agriculture do to grow and to expand, and how can it contribute to food security. And within Food Harvest 2020, sustainability is right in the centre of it, and the idea that if we are going to expand our industry, we must do it in a sustainable manner. So I think, the report then goes on to really see not sustainability as a barrier, but for Ireland as an opportunity. And we've had lots of examples of that this morning as to how Ireland is performing quite well, or very well, or top of the class in terms of various sustainability measurements. So we shouldn't see this as a threat, but rather as something that we can use in terms of selling our produce on the world market. And if I could, make an analogy to a car sales business, I think Bord Bia and our food companies, they've been fantastic in the way they have brought sustainability into the showroom, and they've enhanced the product that we're selling, that Ireland is selling in the showroom through the sustainability dimension that they've added to it. And I suppose just to show where we fit into it, behind every good showroom you need a good workshop as well. And I suppose Teagasc, we're inside in the workshop, and what I want to do is maybe show you today some of the science that we're involved in and some of the advice that we're involved in that is underpinning what we're trying to do in terms of marketing Irish food abroad and using sustainability as one of the ways that we do that. So before I get into it, I suppose the first thing I want to look at is, and I won't spend long at this, but what is sustainability? Because it means different things to different people. And I suppose, we had a lovely presentation from Saoirse Ronan, who really, I think, put it very well about leaving the land as bountiful in the future as it is today. And that's very much how we would describe it ourselves. We leave our land as productive and efficient in 20 or 30 or 40 years' time as it is today, and that we maintain the countryside as a high-quality place to live and work. And there are many dimensions of sustainability then that you have to take account of to fit into that definition. And it's not all just about the environmental aspects. I guess the key aspect, first and foremost, is that people involved in agriculture and living in the countryside have a decent standard of living. So the economic sustainability is the first thing that you've got to look at. Then we've social sustainability, we've animal welfare, as mentioned earlier, and we come to environmental sustainability, which is obviously a very important element of sustainability. And within the environmental sustainability area, there's a number of areas or challenges or aspects to it. We've the whole water that has been mentioned, we've soil quality, we've biodiversity, and we've the area that we're primarily focused on here today in terms of climate change or greenhouse gas emissions. So that's what we mean, I suppose, so that's how we see sustainability when we come to address it. So how does Ireland stand in relation to that? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we've already had a lot of allusions to where Ireland stands internationally in terms of our sustainability from an environmental perspective status. And, we've seen all the things about having the lowest carbon footprint for milk in the EU, the fifth lowest for beef, and so on. And I think that's very important to recognise that and to, keep that as the starting point, really, that we are a very efficient and very good producer of food from a sustainability point of view, and that we build on that really for the future. And as our food companies and Bord Bia are doing, we use that when we're trying to sell our food abroad. But just because we're good doesn't mean that we can sit back. And I think that there's a couple of aspects in relation to that. The first is that the targets are becoming increasingly stringent. So the goalposts don't stay in the same place, in other words. So it's harder to hit a moving goalpost, especially when it's going further away from you. And I'm not going to go through all the various things in the interest of time, Thomas, but if you take the Water Framework Directive, the challenge there is that all waters must be of good quality, and any waters that are pristine must be maintained as pristine. With the Nitrates Directive, we have to prove to Brussels that the nitrates derogation does not harm the environment. So, the standard or the onus on us is quite challenging in order to do things like that. Coming to climate change, which is where we're focused today, in the short term, our aim is to increase production without increasing emissions, to try to improve the efficiency and get our increased production that way. But in the long term, we heard the Minister talking this morning, and we heard Rory referring to this idea of a carbon neutral agriculture and developing roadmaps as to how we will get there. But it's out there on the horizon. I think Rory put it very well. It's something on the horizon that we aim for. Maybe it's something under the end of the rainbow that you never actually quite reach, but it's where it sets the direction or the compass for you as to where you're trying to go. So the targets are always becoming more difficult for us to meet. As well as that, other countries aren't just standing still and admiring us for our very strong sustainability performance. They're trying to play catch-up, obviously. And the graphs there on the left, I won't go into them in the detail, but basically they show a number of countries and how they have changed their carbon footprint for meat production over the years. And we can see that basically they're all improving. They're still maybe a long way behind us, but they're going in the direction that we're going in. And we had, at the Agricultural Science Association conference last September, we had the Director General of Embrapa, the research organisation from Brazil, speaking. And he outlined how they are, according to his data anyway, vastly improving their carbon footprint. They still have a long way to go, but you know what I mean? They won't be, as I said, standing back admiring us. Closer to home in the UK, they've put a lot of emphasis on carbon in recent years, and they've ramped up their activity in the agriculture area. And actually, there's a big conference on today about how they can do the same sort of thing that we talk about, producing more from less. So if we want to stay ahead, we've got to keep moving in this game. So just to show you then what our, I suppose, resources in relation to this area are, I've outlined in this slide where the aspects of sustainability that we work in, whether it's from nutrient efficiency, water quality, right over to environmental economics and behavioural modelling. So there's a lot of aspects of sustainability that we have activity in. If we look at the resources that we deploy to that, on the research side, we've 26 of our researchers are involved to some extent or other in research and sustainability. Now, they could very well be researchers that you might know and more as grassland researchers or genetics researchers or whatever, but some of their work feeds into improving the sustainability programme. As well as those, we've over 20 postgrad students. That's mainly people doing PhDs and 50 support staff. So quite a big part of our resource is devoted to the sustainability agenda. On the knowledge transfer or advisory side, we have 5 environmental specialists along with 26 new soil and environmental advisors. In total, our expenditure on sustainability is about 10 million, most of that on the research side, which it takes up about 1/6 of our expenditure on our research programmes. In terms of the philosophy that we employ in terms of what we do in the sustainability area, it's really around this key, I suppose, philosophy that sustainability and efficiency are two sides of the one coin, and that if you can improve efficiency, you improve sustainability. And it's very much along the lines of what Laura just talked about there in terms of making more efficient use of resources. And that gives us this phrase that we use or abuse, this double dividend or win-win outcome, where we both reduce the environmental losses or environmental impact, but we also reduce cost, and therefore we improve profitability on farms. And that's, I suppose, what we are after with sustainability. We're trying to find ways that both will improve the profitability and the efficiency of farming and also enhance its environmental credentials. When you're doing that, one of the most important things to do is obviously to assess the various measures that you might use to control emissions for their cost effectiveness, and I'll come to that a little bit later. So And sustainability goes right across both our research and knowledge transfer programmes. The research is obviously more longer term or medium term at least, and in that we're trying to develop new solutions or new mitigation mechanisms that will further reduce our emissions. On the knowledge transfer or advisory side, that's the here and now, and that's where we're trying to, I suppose, close the gap between what the top 10% of producers can achieve and the remaining 90% or the peloton of farmers, using solutions that are already there, that are already proven to be effective. So moving in then to the area, I suppose, of underpinning the work that Bord Bia and our food companies do in terms of using sustainability for marketing Irish food. And one of the key jobs that has to be done in this is proving our credentials. And we're very much working on this in collaboration with Bord Bia and the industry. And counting carbon is actually a very tricky business. And we had a short debate on that in the last session with David's, very relevant question about the metrics that we use. So the point I want to make is it is a tricky business counting carbon. And we've been working with Bord Bia and industry players like Glanbia on this to develop the methodologies that would be used for carbon assessment. And what I'm trying to show on the bottom part of this graph here is that the more measurements that you do on individual farms, there's obviously an increase in the transaction cost and the complexity of doing that. And every farm is only representative of itself. So there will be a lot of natural variation between farms and on the same farm from year to year. So what's really important to the individual farmer is to focus on the practices that can improve his carbon footprint. And our Carbon Navigator, that's a tool that we have developed, which for individual farmers will generate what for them are the practices that they should focus on most in order to reduce the carbon footprint on their particular farm. And we've linked that Carbon Navigator into the Bord Bia Quality Assurance Audit Scheme so that every farmer gets a list of practices that he should or she should focus on in terms of making their business more carbon efficient. So I think it's a great example of interagency cooperation and collaboration in this sphere. Just moving on then, and how do we take what we learn from the research and put it into adoption or practice adoption on farms? I just want to highlight a few slides in relation to this because that's what Teagasc as an organisation is about. We're a research organisation where we try to develop new or better strategies or management practices or technologies for farms, and then we try to roll those out to farms through the advisory service. So in this area of greenhouse gas research, we have over 10 years of research carried out in terms of looking at ways to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. And that's very important both from the point of view of establishing what can be done on farms, but also it's very important in giving Ireland credentials when we come to the debates around greenhouse gases and limits, that we're seen to be credible players on the world stage in terms of our interest and our knowledge and our expertise on climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm not sure how solid an endorsement this is, but we featured on the last issue, or the December issue, I think, of National Geographic. There was a picture there of a cow in Moore Park having her methane emissions measured. Anyway, that's, I suppose, we have a long history of work in this area at this stage. What we have done with all that work, I suppose, probably the best summation of that work was an exercise that we carried out last year, which fed into the study that NESC were doing on behalf of the government. And that was where we developed a marginal abasement cost curve for greenhouse gas emissions from Irish agriculture. Now that's a long term. What it is basically, it's where you look at all the possible measures or practices that farmers could adopt to reduce emissions. And you rank those based on the amount of emissions they might reduce and the cost of them. So on this graph here, there's a range of emissions, 12 or 14 different, not a range of emissions, a range of practices or technologies that farmers could use to reduce their carbon footprint. And starting on the left there, we have EBI, or improving the EBI on dairy farms. And for Alexander, just for your benefit, that is the index of genetic merit on dairy farms. So you mentioned earlier in your talk how important genetics was as a mitigator of greenhouse gas emissions. And for us, it's the single most important thing that our farmers can do to reduce the carbon footprint or reduce the emissions from Irish agriculture. So starting there, and you move across the line with various mitigation technologies. The width of the box underneath the name tells you how much mitigation potential there is. So for EBI, there's a very big or a very wide mitigation potential. What's also most important is whether the box goes downwards or upwards. If it goes downwards like EBI does, and for all those green ones, it means that actually it saves farmers money, or it contributes to profitability. Whereas when you come over to the ones on the right-hand side of the page, for farmers to implement those would actually cost them money. So things like nitrification inhibitors. So they're not things that farmers are going to adopt. So in our work with farmers and Bord Bia and with this carbon navigator that I mentioned, it's the practices on the left-hand side of the graph that we will focus on in advising farmers. These are the things that you can do. And as you can see with things like EBI or extended grazing or improved weight gain, they're things that you would want to be doing anyway on your farms. So they really are, I think, we do have a suite of win-win type measures that we can go about getting implemented or getting further implemented on farms to help improve our carbon footprint as a country or as an industry. And as I said, we have done all the research on those measures and what impact they can make. And now through the Bord Bia audit system and our own discussion groups and the Carbon Navigator, we're, I suppose, highlighting to farmers how those practices that we might have highlighted to them in other years just from a profitability point of view are also very important from a sustainability perspective. In terms of water quality, and I know the time has gone on, so I won't go through this in detail, but again, we have a long track record of working in terms of water quality, and I suppose in 2011 we had a major review of the Nitrates Action Programme, and that research fed into that review, and we had a very comprehensive submission to that review. The Nitrates Action Programme is up for review again this year. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to be a different type of review this year, and the continuation or the scientific evaluation of the derogation is really going to be the big story of the Nitrates Action Programme review in 2013. So again, all the work that we're doing in terms of water quality and the agricultural catchments programme will feed directly into that review. In terms of soil fertility, again, we've, much longer than 10 years since the foundation of An Foras Talúntas, we've been working on the area of soil fertility. And for you as farmers, I suppose, that has obviously led to improved production. Fertility of soils is one of the critical factors in terms of soil productivity. I suppose where this interfaces with sustainability in the environment is if we can save money by avoiding excess fertiliser applications, well, farmers save money and there's less nutrients being used in the environment. So that's another very important dimension of sustainability. The only thing I'll highlight here in terms of current work is that we're at the point of almost completing the soil map of Ireland. And for those of you that have long memories, this was one of the big activities of Teagasc's predecessor An Foras Talúntas. And it's a great example, actually, of how, if you permit me for a second to digress, of how we can do things better and smarter nowadays. For the first, I suppose, 30 years of the soil survey, there was up to 40 people working on the soil survey in An Foras Talúntas and going around doing really brilliant work in terms of digging holes and mapping soils. And that was stopped with the last great recession in Ireland in the mid-1980s. It was one of the things that got the chop when money ran out then. So with the support of the EPA and the Department of Agriculture, we now have a project to complete that soil survey. And instead of taking the first tranche of it did half the country in about 30 years. We're going to complete that survey now in 5 years with about 6 to 8 people. So you can see we can work a bit smarter and faster in the public sector as well over time. So look, I'm coming to the end. Biodiversity, another area of sustainability, but I just maybe go past that. Collaboration, I think, there's been a lot of talk this morning about the need for collaboration between farmers, between the food companies, between other agencies, and we absolutely endorse that, and we're thoroughly committed to that, and we work not just with the agencies here today, but with many other research organisations and institutes here in Ireland and throughout the world, and I think that's vital in this area because it is a global picture, and what we do in Ireland has a very little impact really on global emissions, but we do want to have a big influence in terms of the way that this is treated and dealt with internationally. So in terms of the take-home messages, sustainability, as you know, is at the heart of Food Harvest 2020. We believe that the growth targets and the environmental targets can be met simultaneously, but only if they're properly managed and we take action from the start. The environmental targets, as I said, they don't stand still. They are becoming increasingly challenging. Our research is about developing win-win solutions that are mainly based on improving efficiency in the farming sector. Sustainability is not the preserve of a small group of researchers within Teagasc, primarily based in Johnstown Castle, even though they do work almost exclusively on sustainability. But sustainability is part of the programme of every centre in Teagasc now, every research centre in Teagasc, and of the advisory service. So it is a big central plank of what we do. It does need, I think, to make sure that we maintain our strong position in sustainability. It does require a collaborative effort on all of us. That's yourselves, that's the agri-industry, ourselves, the agency, the government. And I would commend Thomas and the IFA for organising this seminar here today. I think it is really useful, and I think it's great to see the range of people that are here that are all working more or less in the one direction in terms of how Ireland is going to deal with this issue of climate change and the wider sustainability agenda. So I leave it there, Thomas, and apologies for going on a bit longer, but I was trying to do Jerry's talk, and it's hard to know sometimes what he meant with some of the things, but that's